Well, Shabbat Shalom. It is not the seventh day Sabbath. It is a high Shabbat. This is being recorded on May the 1st, 2013, and it is the seventh day of Unleavened Bread, the final high Sabbath closing out this joyous season of Passover. My name is Daniel John Lee, and this is Torah Restoration Ministries. The website is www.spiritandtorah.com. And for today, on the seventh day of Unleavened Bread, I have a very special message that I want to give. It's short and simple, but it's very special because it's something that I had never seen before in the scriptures. But it's very, very relevant to Passover and relevant to the future, as you're about to see. If you remember the story in 2 Samuel chapter 15, now this is when King David, he is an older man. He's been ruling over Israel for quite a number of years. And his son Absalom decides to stage a rebellion and even recruits one of David's most trusted advisors. In fact, he's known as the wisest person in the land, Ahithophel. And Ahithophel is an extremely wise counselor. And Absalom is basically staging a coup. He's taking the kingship away from David. He's declaring himself king. And so in 2 Samuel 15, we read about how David takes his household. He leaves 10 concubines behind at his palace to take care of the home, but he takes the rest of his family and his household, and he flees. He gets out of Jerusalem because he doesn't know what's going to happen. There's something very, very interesting, though, that occurs as David is leaving with his family. And that's in 2 Samuel chapter 15, and just starting in verse 30. It says, "And David went up by the ascent of Mount Olivet." So we're talking about the Mount Olives. "And he wept as he went up, and had his head covered, and he went barefoot. And all the people that were with him covered every man his head, and they went up weeping as they went up." So David is ascending the Mount of Olives, and he's weeping. He's crying. His family is crying with him. He's in great defeat. Now, this is the very same mountain, the Skull Mountain actually, Mount of Olives, that Yahshua ascended when he was being led to be crucified. And so the fact that David was going up this mountain, the Mount of Olives, in great weeping and great tears and great grief, even as Yahshua did many, many, many years later when he bore that cross on Passover, I think is extremely significant. And then it says in verse 31, "And one told David, saying, Ahithophel," it's hard to pronounce that name, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Yahweh, I pray you turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness." Because he knows that if this very, very wise counselor helps Absalom, it's over for David. David's not going to be able to overcome that. "And it came to pass that when David was come to the top of Mount Olives," so now he's at the very, very top of this mountain, "and there he worshipped Yahweh. And behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head. Unto whom David said, If you pass on with me, then you shall be a burden unto me. But if you return to the city, and say unto Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant from this point until now, so will I now also be your servant. Then may you for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel." So at the very top of this Mount of Olives, David runs into Hushai. And if you continue reading in 2 Samuel 16 and 17, you'll find out that that is exactly what happens. Hushai goes back, and even though Ahithophel gives Absalom really, really good advice that would totally destroy David, Absalom decides to reject that advice and go with Hushai's advice instead. And that winds up allowing David to survive and defeats Absalom eventually. So David basically secures his victory at the top of Mount Olives. Well, that's another foreshadow, because if you read in Zechariah 14, in the very first few verses of that chapter, we talk about Yahshua returning again. And where are his feet going to land? On the very, very top of Mount Olives. That's where he's going to get the ultimate victory. When he returns with his bride, he's going to return on the top of Mount Olives, and we read in the scriptures that the mountain is going to cleave to the east and to the west. So just as King David found his victory, the seeds of his victory right there on the top of Mount Olives, so Yahshua, when he returns and begins his 1,000-year reign, it will be at the top of Mount Olives. I thought this was appropriate to share on the seventh day of unleavened bread because, Passover and unleavened bread and first fruits were all always looking back toward what Yahshua did, and that's very good. I mean, this whole feast is a memorial of what Yahshua did for us. But I think this is neat because this points forward. It points forward to what Yahshua will do when he returns in victory on the top of Mount Olives. So I hope this was a blessing for you. I'm enjoying this beautiful, beautiful day on the seventh day of unleavened bread. I hope you do as well. May you have a wonderful rest of your season of Passover. Yah bless and Shabbat Shalom.